So you're raising your 20-year forecast for plane demand in Southeast Asia. Talk to us. How many planes are we talking here that Southeast Asia will be needing?
Yeah, so for the next 20 years, Southeast Asia will need 4,210 airplanes worth $560 billion US. This forecast compared to last year is about $90 billion US more, or about 9%, like you said earlier. So it's a significant increase because we see a huge impact of LCCs, both low-cost long-haul and low-cost short-haul in this region.
But part of that, 4,000 planes in the skies, it feels very crowded. In fact, this is already a very crowded airspace right now. What are the biggest challenges to have that many planes? Is it sustainable?
Yeah, well, clearly, if you look at our world forecast, it is 41,000 airplanes and $6.1 trillion. And yes, 4,000 airplanes sounds large, but we have a significant population in this part of the world. They have propensity to fly. And what the governments need to do in this region is to continue to support the aviation by enhancing the infrastructure, by adding more landings per hour, by enhancing the airports, by building more runways, and that is what is going to be the need of the hour here. And we think our forecast is based on careful analysis of what those would be for the next few years. We don't have plan all the way up to the 20 years, but each of the countries involved, which are all growth nations, like, for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, all have aspiration to grow their aviation. And right here in Singapore, the T4 just opened, Terminal 4 at Changi. So there is a continuous improvement in the infrastructure, which is what is needed to meet such a forecast of additional 4,210 airplanes. But mind you, this also includes retirement of some of the airplanes that are flying today. So this forecast includes both the replacement and the growth market for Southeast Asia for the next 20 years.
Dinesh, I don't know, but who's going to fly all of these planes? 41,000 airplanes over the next 20 years. I mean, are we going to get enough pilots trained up in that time frame to make sure that everyone feels safe on these planes?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is something we continuously monitor. We open up training centers. We support airlines who are buying these airplanes. We make sure they have the internal infrastructure not only to have the airplanes with pilots, but also maintenance engineers and people, hangars, all those personnel, so that the airplanes can be flown safely. I mean, safety is a given in our industry. That is the basics before anything else happens. And we feel our forecast is based on taking into all those things account. And recently, we also announced our forecast for the number of pilots needed for the world and the Southeast Asia, also the number of mechanics and the maintenance engineers needed. So it's all lined up together, and it is a number that comes with a significant thought process with a lot of people's input over the last 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. I mean, booking orders is one thing. Financing and the ability to pay is another. Jet Airways, what happened to their 787 order here? And when you take a look at just the global conditions of FOMC raising rates and, the fear that emerging markets will feel a sucking sound out of equity markets and money flow into this region, how does that all impact future growth and orders for you?
Sure. So if you look at the liquidity in the market today, we are more than satisfied that there is enough liquidity to finance the airplanes in the near term. No question about that. In terms of the return on those investments by the leasing companies, you can look at anybody, including Bank of China Aviation, which is my customer here in Singapore. Their returns are very good because they have ability to get money cheaper, and they're able to get good returns on it by leasing these airplanes to key customers around not just Southeast Asia, but around the world. So we think if you see the growth of the leasing companies over the last few years, roughly 30% of the airplanes today are going into the lease market. And then on top of it, many airlines are doing sale-leasebacks, which includes airlines like Jet Airways, SpiceJet, Lion Air, AirAsia. All these airlines are doing sale-leasebacks, which is where they're getting the money to finance these airplanes. So we feel, yes, FOMC is raising the rate, but the rates today are still much lower than what this industry has seen. And I think we feel comfortable that there will be not only commercial funding available, there will be other types of creating financing like the Japanese leverage lease and others will come into play so that the financing can take place. We monitor this well in advance, so we know when the airplane delivers, the money will be there to pay the sort of delivery price.
Let's talk about India. Jet Airways, they had a 787 order. Have they canceled that order? What's happening with that?
Absolutely not. They had initially ordered the 787-8 version of that particular airplane. And subsequently, as you know, the 787-9 has come out, which has incredible legs. Like, for example, Qantas is going to fly that airplane next year from Perth to London and all. So they converted that order from 787-8 to a bigger model with longer range, 787-9. And they are expected to take those airplanes in about 2.5 years. No, that order is not canceled. It's still very much in our books.
Good. Dinesh, since we're talking long-term here, I want to talk about how technology might be disrupting your industry. Because, yes, you have this projection of, say, 41,000 planes. I'm wondering, how are you factoring in technology and companies, say, like Elon Musk, his Hyperloop, that are trying to make land transport more efficient, multiple times more quickly? How do you think that's going to affect you, especially the shorter routes?
No, clearly, I mean, look, we monitor that very carefully, just like we monitor the aspirations of many countries like Japan, China, Russia, Brazil, Canada to create airplanes at, say, 100, 150-seater market. That is also a disruption. In fact, another disruption we faced and we successfully overcame was the video conferencing. There was a lot of talk that when video conferencing started, people will fly less and they will be doing their work from their offices by doing video conferencing. And now with FaceTime and Skype, people thought they will be able to fly less. But on the other hand, the traffic is growing very good. In fact, we are at an all-time high. Since we talked India a minute ago, traffic grew there last year 23%, which is the highest in the world and twice compared to China. So the growth will continue. Yes, we'll monitor the disruption of technologies. Yes, there will be things coming up. We're also monitoring very carefully the world of autonomous situation, like the cars are now going autonomous. What will happen to the airplanes, how that will come in play, the digital aviation. All these things we're monitoring very well. And yes, we want to be the first one and not getting disrupted by the technology such as that, because our technology arm is very solid. We have a good understanding of what is going out there, and we are always looking at what's in the future. Speaking of that, what we are looking at is how we continue to reduce the cost of operation of an airplane. How do we build airplanes that are the right size, and how do we meet the needs of the industry? And that is what the products we are coming up with, and that is how we are bullish on the growth of the whole world and certainly Southeast Asia.
Yeah. Dinesh, very quickly, security is a huge growing issue in the region. How are you addressing security concerns?
Well, I mean, again, we are very careful. Our 787 airplane is got a lot of electric stuff and electronics in it, and we make sure that it is safe from any kind of cyber threats, and we continue to build the airplanes in a right manner. And yes, we live in a different world today than we lived 20 years ago when we produced the 757, 767s.
Dinesh?